The crystalline spires of the Luminarch High Court reflected 1,000 suns, each one captured from conquered worlds and displayed like trophies. Ambassador Chen stood at the center of the great hall, her hands bound in energy restraints that pulsed with violet light. Around her, the assembled delegates of 47 species watched in absolute silence. The air tasted of ozone and fear. Queen Solarix rose from her throne, her 6 eyes narrowing in vertical slits. Her carapace gleamed like polished obsidian, and the ceremonial blades mounted on her forearms caught the light of the stolen suns. She had ruled the Luminarch Empire for 300 cycles, and in that time, no species had refused to kneel. Ambassador Chen of Earth. Her voice carried through the hall without amplification, resonating in frequencies that made human bones ache. You stand accused of violating Protocol 7 of the Accords. You brought an unauthorized life form into sacred space. The penalty is submission or death. Chen's uniform was torn at the shoulder where the guards had dragged her from her ship. Blood had dried along her hairline from where her head had struck the landing bay floor. But her eyes remained steady. I understand the charge, Your Radiance. Then kneel. The word hung in the air like a blade. Every delegate in the hall had knelt before Solarix at some point. The Vraxian warlords, whose species had burned entire star systems. The Nethys philosophers, who claimed to serve only truth. Even the Korathi hive mind, which considered itself beyond individual submission. All had bent. Chen looked at the queen. Not at her feet, not at her throne, but directly into those 6 ancient eyes. And something passed across her face that made the nearest guards shift their grip on their pulse weapons. Pity. I cannot, Chen said quietly. The silence that followed could have swallowed stars. Solarix's mandibles clicked once, twice, a sound like breaking stone. She descended from the throne platform, her clawed feet striking the floor with measured precision. The delegates pulled back, creating a widening circle around the 2 figures. You refuse? Solarix stopped 3 paces away. Your species is barely capable of light-speed travel. You have no colonies beyond your own star system. Your military could be crushed in days. Yet you refuse? Not refuse, Your Radiance. Cannot. Chen's voice remained calm, almost gentle. I understand you believe I'm defying your authority. But if you knew what I know, you would not ask me to kneel. A low hiss rippled through the assembled court. The Vraxian delegates' thermal pits flared with heat. The Nethys representatives consulted in rapid clicks. No one spoke to the queen this way. No one survived speaking to the queen this way. Solarix's primary eyes fixed on Chen while her secondary pair scanned the human's body language. 3 centuries of rule had taught her to read defiance, to smell fear masked as courage, to detect lies wrapped in truth. What she saw now confused her. The human was afraid. Her heartbeat was elevated, her pupils dilated, her breathing shallow. But beneath the fear lay something else. Determination, yes. Conviction. But also that strange, persistent emotion that Solarix had first identified. Pity. Explain. The queen commanded. Explain why you cannot kneel, and do so quickly. My patience has limits measured in heartbeats. Chen glanced toward the far wall of the court, where floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the palace grounds. Somewhere beyond those walls, in the holding facility for unauthorized cargo, a small voice would be asking for her. Frightened. Alone. I brought a child, Chen said. A human child. She's 7 years old. Her name is Maya. We know this. Solarix's mandibles clicked with irritation. You were transporting her without proper documentation, without clearance, without time. Chen interrupted. The guards' weapons hummed to life, but Solarix raised one blade to stay them. Without time, Your Radiance. Because she was dying. The queen's antennae twitched. Explain. Maya has a genetic condition. It's rare among our people, but fatal. Without treatment, she has weeks. The only facility in our sector capable of treating her is the medical station on Nerix 6. To reach it, I had to cross through Luminarch space. Then you should have requested permission. I did. 3 weeks ago. Your bureaucracy classified it as low priority. The approval wouldn't come through for another month. Chen's voice cracked slightly. She doesn't have a month. Solaric studied the human. The story was verifiable, would be verified within moments by her intelligence staff. But that wasn't what held her attention. It was the way Chen stood, the way she held herself despite the restraints and the weapons and the absolute certainty of what defying the Queen meant. You risked everything for this child, Solaric said. It wasn't a question. Yes. She is not even your offspring. Our records show no genetic relation. No. She's not mine. Chen's eyes glistened, but her voice remained steady. But she's 7 years old, and she's terrified, and she asked me to help her. So I did. The Queen circled the ambassador slowly, her claws clicking against the polished floor. The court remained frozen, hardly daring to breathe. This was unprecedented. The Queen engaged in dialogue with those who defied her only long enough to understand how to make their punishment exemplary. And if I execute you now, Solaric said, her voice dropping to a frequency that made Chen's teeth ache, what becomes of the child? Chen closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, they were clear. She dies. Alone. In a cell. Asking for her mother. Her mother is dead? 6 months ago. Viral plague. The same one that ravaged the outer colonies. Maya survived the virus, but Chen's jaw tightened. The illness damaged her genes. Her body is destroying itself from the inside out. Every day is pain. And all she wants is someone to tell her it will be okay. Solaric stopped directly in front of Chen. They were nearly the same height, though the Queen's natural weaponry and armor made her far more imposing. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she turned to her chief of security, a massive Korathi warrior whose chitinous armor bore the scars of 100 battles. The child. Bring her. The command rippled through the court like a shockwave. Delegates exchanged glances, their various methods of communication creating a symphony of confusion and speculation. Bring a prisoner before the Queen? During formal judgment? It was unheard of. Chen's head snapped up. Your Radiance, please, she's done nothing wrong. If you want to punish someone, silence. The word was not shouted, but it carried absolute authority. Chen's mouth closed. You will speak when I permit it. You will kneel when I command it. Or you will watch everything you tried to protect crumble to dust. Do you understand? Chen nodded once. I did not hear you, Ambassador. Yes, Your Radiance. I understand. Good. Solarix returned to her throne but did not sit. Instead, she stood beside it, one blade resting against the armrest. Now we wait. And you will explain to me exactly why you looked at me with pity. Chen's breath caught. I didn't mean you did. I saw it clearly. You, a representative of a species that possesses no significant military power, no advanced technology, no influence in this empire, looked at me, the ruler of 600 worlds, with pity. Explain. Now. The massive doors at the far end of the hall began to open. Chen's hands trembled in their restraints. Because, she said quietly, meeting those 6 eyes once more, I know what it costs to sit where you sit. And I know what you're about to see. The doors swung wide. 2 guards entered, and between them, holding each of their hands with her small fingers, walked a child. Maya was small for 7, her skin pale from months of illness. She wore a simple gray shipsuit several sizes too large, and her dark hair had been pulled into a messy braid. But her eyes were wide and alert, taking in the vast hall, the assembled aliens, the impossible grandeur of it all with the fearless curiosity of childhood. When she saw Chen, her face lit up. Ambassador Chen! Her voice echoed through the silent court, high and clear and utterly without fear. You came back! I knew you would. The guards said you might not, but I told them you promised, and you always keep your promises. She tried to run forward, but the guards held her hands firm. Maya looked up at them, confused. "It's okay," she said with perfect 7-year-old logic. "She's my friend. You can let go." The guards looked to their queen. Solaric stared at the child for a long moment. Then, she made a small gesture with one blade. The guards released Maya's hands. The girl ran across the polished floor, her 2 large boots slapping against stone, and threw her arms around Chen's waist. The energy restraints sparked at the contact, but Maya didn't notice. She pressed her face against Chen's torn uniform and held tight. "I was scared," Maya whispered, loud enough for the acoustics of the hall to carry her words to every corner. "But I remembered what you said. About being brave even when you're scared. So I was." Chen couldn't embrace her back, not with her hands bound, but she bent slightly, pressing her cheek to the top of Maya's head. "You were so brave," she murmured. "I'm so proud of you." Solix descended from her platform once more. Her approach was slow, deliberate. Maya heard the clicking of claws and looked up. Her eyes went wide as she took in the queen's full height, her armor, her blades, her 6 gleaming eyes. "Wow!" Maya breathed. "You're beautiful." The court collectively froze. Several delegates made sounds that might have been gasps in their respective languages. No one called the queen beautiful. Fearsome, yes. Terrible. Magnificent. But beautiful suggested something soft, something vulnerable. Salarix's antennae twitched rapidly, a sign her court knew meant profound surprise. She lowered herself slightly, bringing her primary eyes level with the child. "You are not afraid," the queen observed. "Should I be?" Maya tilted her head, genuinely curious. "Ambassador Chen says that being afraid is okay, but being mean isn't. Are you going to be mean?" "I am a queen. I do not concern myself with human concepts of mean." "Oh." Maya considered this. "What do you concern yourself with?" "Order. Justice. The security of my empire." "That sounds lonely," Maya said. Then, before anyone could react, she reached out and gently touched one of Salarix's lower arms. Every weapon in the room activated simultaneously. Energy weapons hummed, plasma rifles charged, the air itself seemed to ignite with potential violence. But Salarix raised all 4 of her blades in a gesture that meant absolute stillness. Maya's small hand rested against the queen's carapace, her fingers tracing the iridescent patterns there. "Your skin is like a rainbow," she said softly. "My mom used to tell me that rainbows were promises. That after every storm, there's something beautiful. I miss her." Salarix remained motionless. 300 years of rule. Thousands of judgments. Countless executions. Nothing in all that time had prepared her for this moment. "Your mother is deceased," she said finally. "Yes. She got sick. Like me." Maya pulled her hand back and looked down at her own arms, where faint discolorations marked the progression of her illness. "I'm dying too." That's why Ambassador Chen was hurrying. She was trying to save me. By breaking our laws. I guess so. Maya looked up at Chen, then back to the queen. But isn't saving someone more important than rules? The question hung in the air like a physical presence. Salarix straightened to her full height, towering over the child. "Rules maintain civilization," the queen said. "Without them, there is only chaos." Mom said that too. She was a doctor. She had lots of rules. Maya's voice got quieter. But she also said that sometimes you have to choose between doing what's right and doing what's allowed. And if they're different, you have to think really hard about which one matters more. Salarix turned to Chen. The ambassador stood very still, her expression carefully neutral, but her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "You taught her this?" the queen asked. "No, Your Radiance." Her mother did. A doctor who believed rules could be broken. A doctor who believed people were more important than protocol. Chen's voice was steady now, all fear burned away by something fiercer. She died treating patients during the plague. She could have evacuated. She was ordered to evacuate. She stayed. And she saved 3,000 lives before the virus killed her. Salarix's mandibles moved in a pattern that might have been thought. She looked down at Maya again. Child. Do you understand where you are? The big shiny palace? Maya offered. The High Court of the Luminarch Empire. I am Queen Salarix. These delegates represent species from across 600 worlds. This is not a place for children. Why not? The question was so simple, so genuine, that it stopped the queen mid-thought. Because this is where justice is dispensed. Where laws are upheld. Where you decide who gets to live and who doesn't. Maya's voice wasn't accusatory, just curious. That sounds like something that should definitely include children. Since, we're the ones who have to live in whatever world you're making. A sound rippled through the court that might have been shocked laughter from some delegates, outrage from others. The Nethi's representatives were practically vibrating with philosophical excitement. Salarix stared at the child for a long moment. Then, she turned to her chief of security. Clear the court. All except the ambassador and the child. Your Radiance? The Korathi warrior's voice resonated with confusion. You heard my command. Clear it. Now. The delegates filed out in absolute silence, their various forms of locomotion creating a symphony of clicks, shuffles, slithers, and footsteps. It took several minutes for the vast hall to empty. When the last delegate had departed and the massive doors sealed shut, only 4 beings remained, the queen, her chief of security, Chin, and Maya. Salarix gestured to the Korathi. You as well. Your Radiance, protocol demands, I am the protocol. The queen's voice carried no anger, only absolute certainty. Leave us. The warrior hesitated only a moment before bowing deeply and departing. The sound of the doors closing echoed like thunder. Now there were 3. Salarix approached the windows overlooking her palace grounds. The stolen suns cast her shadow long across the floor. For a long moment she said nothing. Do you know how I became queen? She asked finally. Maya shook her head. Chen remained silent. I killed the previous ruler. In single combat, before the assembled court. It is our way. The strong rule. The weak serve or die. Salarix's reflection in the window was a dark mirror. I was the strongest. I have remained the strongest for 300 cycles. That sounds really hard, Maya said. It is necessary. Is it lonely? The queen's antennae went very still. Why would you ask that? Because you're all alone up here. In this big palace. With all these rules. And everyone's scared of you. I can tell. The way they look at you is the way people looked at the plague. Like if they get too close, they'll get hurt. Maya's voice was matter of fact, no judgment in it. That sounds lonely to me. Salarix turned from the window. You pity me as well, then. Like your ambassador. I don't know what pity means exactly. It means feeling sorry for someone because they have less than you. Maya frowned, thinking hard. But you have everything. This whole big empire. All those sons. The pretty palace. Yes. So what do you have less of? The question struck like a physical blow. Salarix found herself unable to answer. She looked at Chen, who stood very still, watching the exchange with barely concealed tension. Your ambassador looked at me with pity, the queen said, because she knew I would face a choice. The same choice she faced. Rules or compassion. Protocol or life. And she pitied me because she knew which one I would have to choose. But you don't have to choose anything, Maya said, confused. You're the queen. You can do whatever you want, right? I am the queen because I enforce the law. If I break it, what am I? Human? Maya offered. Then she giggled. I mean, not actually human. But you know what I mean. A person. Not just a queen. I cannot be both. Why not? Mom was a doctor and a mom and a person who liked to paint pictures of birds. You can be lots of things at once. Salarix's 6 eyes fixed on the child with an intensity that should have been terrifying. But Maya simply looked back, waiting for an answer with the patient expectation of a child who believed adults could explain anything if given enough time. If I allow you to pass, the Queen said slowly, then every species in my empire will see it as weakness. They will test boundaries, break other laws. The structure I have maintained for 3 centuries will begin to crack. But if you don't, Maya said quietly, then I die. And Ambassador Chen probably dies too, for trying to save me. And that means being strong is more important than being good. In my empire, strength and goodness are the same. Are they though? Maya looked around the empty hall. Everybody left when you told them to. Not because they respect you. Because they're scared of you. That's not the same as being good. That's just being scary. Chen spoke for the first time in several minutes, her voice barely above a whisper. Your Radiance, if I may, you may not. Solarix didn't look away from Maya. This child speaks more truth in her ignorance than all the diplomats in my court speak with their training. I would hear more. Maya shifted uncomfortably. I don't know if I have more truth. I just know that my mom said the best leaders are the ones who use their power to help people who don't have any. And you have all the power. So. She trailed off, then added, I don't think that's a rule. I think that's just what makes sense. The Queen circled the child slowly, her claws clicking with each step. And if helping you causes chaos? If species begin to riot, to challenge my authority, to break laws because I broke this one? If the order I have maintained collapses and millions die in the resulting wars? Is one life worth millions? Maya's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. I don't know. That's a really hard question. But... She wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. But I think that if you have to let children die to keep everyone else in line, maybe something's wrong with the line. Solarix stopped moving. The hall was so silent that the hum of the energy restraints around Chen's wrists sounded like thunder. You would challenge 300 years of stability, the Queen said softly, with the logic of a 7-year-old child. I'm not challenging anything, Maya said, her voice small now, frightened. I just don't want to die. I'm really scared. And it hurts a lot. And I miss my mom. And I know you're really important and busy, but I just want someone to help me. Please. The last word broke something in the vast hall. Or perhaps it had already been broken, and only now did the sound of it cracking reach the surface. Solarix turned to Chen. Release her restraints. Your Radiance? I do not repeat myself. The energy cuffs deactivated and fell away. Chen rubbed her wrists, her expression carefully controlled, but her hands were shaking. The Queen approached Chen slowly. They stood face to face, nearly equal in height, their eyes locked. You looked at me with pity, Solarix said quietly. Not because you thought I was weak, but because you knew what it would cost me to be strong. Chen's voice was rough. Yes, Your Radiance. And what will it cost me to be weak? I don't think mercy is weakness. Every ruler in my empire will disagree. Then they're wrong. Chen straightened, meeting those 6 eyes without flinching. I know what it costs to break rules for what matters. I knew when I brought Maya into your space that I might die for it. But I also knew that I could live with dying if it meant she had a chance. What I couldn't live with was following your protocol and watching her waste away because the paperwork didn't come through in time. So you choose to define your own morality above my law. I choose to define children's lives as more important than anyone's pride. Including mine. Including yours. The Queen's mandibles clicked in what might have been anger or might have been thought. She looked down at Maya, who had pressed herself against Chen's side, her small hands clutching the ambassador's torn uniform. Child, Solarix said, if I allow you to continue to the medical station, will you remember this day? Maya nodded, not trusting her voice. Will you remember that the Queen of the Luminarch Empire bent her laws for you? Another nod. Then, remember this as well. Solarix lowered herself until her eyes were level with Maya's. Remember that power means nothing if it cannot be tempered with wisdom. Remember that strength means nothing if it cannot be balanced with compassion. And remember that every law ever written was written by someone trying to create order from chaos. But sometimes the law itself becomes the chaos we must resist. She straightened and turned to face the sealed doors of the court. Her voice, when she spoke, carried the full weight of 300 years of absolute authority. Let the record show that Ambassador Chen of Earth acted not in defiance of Luminarch law, but in accordance with a higher law that all sentient species must recognize. The protection of the innocent. The preservation of life. The duty we owe to those who cannot protect themselves. She paused. Let the record also show that I, Queen Solarix, recognize her and affirm this higher law. The child will be escorted immediately to Narix 6 Medical Station. All costs will be borne by the Luminarch Empire. Ambassador Chen will accompany her, with full diplomatic immunity restored. Maya's face lit up with hope so bright it seemed to fill the hall. Chen's knees nearly buckled with relief, but she remained standing through sheer force of will. However, the Queen continued, her voice hardening, let the record also show that this decision is not a precedent. It is an exception. One that I grant not because I am weak, but because I am wise enough to know that absolute adherence to law without consideration of circumstance is not justice. It is tyranny. She turned back to Chen and Maya. You will both leave this court. You will receive medical treatment. The child will recover, or she will not, as fate determines. But you will know that you did not stand alone. That even in an empire built on strength and order there is room for mercy. Chen bowed deeply, her voice thick with emotion. Thank you, Your Radiance. Thank you? Do not thank me yet, Ambassador. When word of this spreads, and it will spread, there will be challenges. Species who see this as weakness. Factions who will test boundaries. I will face them all, and I will remind them that mercy granted by a queen from a position of absolute power is not weakness. It is the ultimate expression of strength. Maya stepped forward, looking up at the towering queen. Can I hug you? The question was so unexpected, so completely outside the bounds of protocol or reason, that Solarix actually took a step back. That is not. Children do not embrace queens. I know. But you just saved my life. And my mom taught me that when someone does something really nice, you should thank them properly. And hugs are how I say thank you for the really big things. Solarix looked at Chen, who shrugged helplessly, a small smile finally, breaking through her careful composure. The queen knelt, bringing herself down to Maya's level. Very well, child. But quickly. Queens do not kneel for long. Maya threw her arms around Solarix's neck, pressing her small face against the queen's carapace. The energy field that normally surrounded the queen crackled slightly at the contact, but Solarix deactivated it, allowing the embrace. Thank you for not being scary when it mattered, Maya whispered. Thank you for being good instead. When they separated, there was a dampness on Solarix's carapace that might have been tears, though neither Chen nor Maya would ever mention it. The queen stood, her full height and authority returning like a mantle. She activated the communication system in her throne with a gesture. Prepare medical transport for the child. Priority clearance. And summon the court. I will address them within the hour. She looked at Chen one final time. You came into my empire prepared to die for a child who was not your own. That is the kind of courage I respect. The kind of strength that does not require weapons or armies. Remember that when you tell this story. I will, Your Radiance. And Ambassador? The next time you need to cross Luminarch space, file your paperwork 3 months in advance. My mercy extends only so far. A ghost of a smile touched Chen's lips. Understood, Your Radiance. The doors opened, and the guards who had brought Maya entered. But their demeanor had changed. They moved with respect rather than force, their weapons lowered. Escort them to medical transport. Solarix commanded. They are under royal protection. Any who interfere answer to me directly. As Chen and Maya walked toward the doors, the child looked back one final time. Your Radiance? I don't think you're lonely anymore. I think you just remembered that you don't have to be. Then they were gone, the doors closing behind them with a soft boom that echoed through the empty hall. Solaric stood alone in her court, surrounded by the light of stolen suns, and for the first time in 300 years she wondered if strength and solitude were truly the same thing. When the court reconvened an hour later, the delegates found their queen standing before her throne rather than seated upon it. And when she spoke, her words carried a weight that suggested not weakness, but evolution. "Today, I broke a law I have enforced without exception for 3 centuries," she began. "Some of you will see this as weakness. Others as foolishness. A few, perhaps, as wisdom. But all of you will see it as change." The assembled court waited in absolute silence. "I am still your queen. I am still the strongest. And I will still enforce order in this empire. But I am also wise enough to recognize that law without wisdom becomes oppression. That order without compassion becomes cruelty. And that strength without mercy is merely violence dressed in ceremony." She paused, her 6 eyes scanning the assembled delegates. "A child taught me this today. A dying human child who had nothing to offer, no power to wield, no threats to make. She simply asked for help. And in that asking, she reminded me of something I had forgotten in 300 years of rule." Salarix's voice softened slightly, though it lost none of its authority. "That we do not build empires for the sake of empire. We build them to protect those within them. And if we forget that, if we allow protocol to supersede purpose, then we have already lost what we claim to defend." The Nethys delegate, a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline matrix, pulsed with what might have been approval. The Vraxian warlord's thermal signature showed confusion. Others simply watched and waited. "So let this be known across all 600 worlds," the Queen concluded. "The Luminarch Empire is still an empire of law. But it is also, from this day forward, an empire of wisdom. And any who wish to test whether this makes us weak are welcome to try." The threat in those final words was clear. The Queen had shown mercy, but she had not surrendered power. She had simply chosen to wield it differently. As the court dispersed, whispers spreading like wildfire, Solarix returned to her throne. She sat alone, as queens must. But for the first time in memory, the solitude felt like choice rather than sentence. Somewhere beyond the palace walls, a medical transport lifted into the void, carrying a child toward salvation and an ambassador toward home. And between them, held in small hands and tired hearts, was the knowledge that even the mightiest could bend without breaking. That even queens could kneel, if only to meet a child's eyes. And that sometimes, the strongest thing a ruler can do is remember why they were given power in the first place. Not to rule, but to protect. The stolen suns continued their dance above the crystalline spires, but beneath them, something fundamental had shifted. Not in the structure of the empire. Not in its laws or its might. But in the heart of the one who ruled it. And that, perhaps, was revolution enough.